just love songs about the outdoors and nature and God creating nature, and it gets me excited. We're outdoor people, my family and I. We love to camp, so if you're a camper, you know exactly what I mean. And if you're not, you probably know exactly what I mean. So we love to camp though, as you know. We moved here from Colorado, and we used to camp all the time. And it's very different camping there because it's high altitude and it gets really cold at night, you know, but it's just beautiful. We're very busy people, so what we would do a lot of times on Friday evening, well, toward the close of work, Mike would call and say, I gotta get out of here. It's been a rough week. Let's go to the mountains. Let's go camping. I'm like, okay. And then we couldn't beat each other home fast enough, you know. We'd get home, we'd run into the garage, we'd throw the stuff in, because we had it all ready. We always did. We were always ready. Throw the stuff in the car and go camping. And we'd have to go to the grocery store on the way because we usually didn't have enough groceries in the refrigerator to fill the cooler up. So by the time we got something to eat and we hit Safeway and filled up the cooler and we were hitting the mountains, we were trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to go? I don't know, you know, so we're like brainstorming. But we've done this so many times that we started finding these little areas that we could go camp. And even in the height of the season, we could find a camping spot. We could. And it was great because usually within 3 hours of that initial phone call of, hey, let's go camping, we're sitting at a campsite. You know, so it was really neat. And so that for us brought a lot of balance. Brought a lot of balance to us because we have crazy busy lives, and then all of a sudden you're up in the mountains, you're sitting at the campfire, and there's no cell phone, there's no TV, there's no radio, there's nothing. It's just you and your family and the campfire. So for us, it's almost therapeutic, you know, and getting back in touch with nature and all that. But sitting around that campfire is one of my favorite things to do with my family. We do. We do silly things, play games, tell funny stories, brainstorm, dream, just kind of unwind and kind of just be a family because we've removed ourselves from, you know, our everyday craziness. And all of a sudden we're sitting around a campfire. And it smells good. I love the smell. So anyway, that's one of my favorite things. The second favorite thing I love about camping is when you wake up and somebody's frying bacon. Okay? It just doesn't get much better than that, you know? So, campfire at night with the family, the bacon in the morning. And then there's another thing that usually happens when you're camping, especially high altitude. You try to drink a lot of water because you're up there, you get that high altitude headache going on. And something happens around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning where you wake up and you think, oh man, I'm so warm inside my bag. And my face is so cold. It's so cold out there. I'm glad there's no reason I have to get up. And you're like, oh man, what happens when you think that? All of a sudden, you really need to get up and take the walk down to the shower house, you know? So you fight it, you roll over, you think, oh, maybe I can wait till morning. You know? Finally, you just give in. Well, when you're in a tent, it's a little bit harder. And this is probably some of the reason some people aren't campers, right? Because you're in there and you're thinking, okay, I gotta put extra layers on, I gotta find my glasses, I gotta find my flashlight, I gotta scoot down, put my shoes on. And then this is the time when the door zipper always gets stuck. You know, and you're like, you're shaking the whole tent, you're trying to get it open, and about this time Michael would always go, what are you doing? I'm like, I gotta get out of the tent. So finally, you know, get out of the tent and start walking. But the thing is, when you step out on a clear, cold Colorado night, when there's no storms, you look up and you're just stopped in your tracks with the stars. I mean, I've seen stars my whole life. I love the stars. You love to go out at night as a kid and look at the stars. But there's something about being somewhere where there's no light pollution and there's just no other people around. And there's just this amazing, it's so bright you don't need the flashlight. You know, you got the moon shining, you got the stars. Some of them are bright, some of them aren't. Some of them, you're told, are planets. You know, you can see shooting stars. And I mean, you just have to stand there in the cold and look at those stars. And it's just like, wow, God, look what you did. This is amazing. This is just, I mean, it just blows my mind. And I remember thinking early on was, you know, it's like I'm flying into outer space. I'm out here in the middle of all these stars. And then you realize you are. We're on one of those planets, and we're spinning around, and we're out there. We're one of the lights in the sky. And we are a part of this big, huge thing that God has put together. It's just amazing. And so I remember waking Mike up early on and saying, hey, you got to come. You got to get out here. The stars are out tonight. It's gorgeous. And then he did. He came. He's like, wow. And so now we have a deal. Whoever wakes up first, if the stars are out, we have to wake up. Now Chris is involved too. Whole family. We're standing out in the middle of the cold night looking at the stars because it's just worth it. And I'd say that's probably my favorite part of camping because you're standing there and it hits you that you are part of this huge creation that God has made, and we're part of it, and we're in the middle of it, and it's alive, and it's moving, and it's active, and oh, it's just so exciting. But, I mean, that's a kind of a funny phrase at the same time, though, don't you think? The stars are out. I mean, they're always out. They're out right now. They're out in the daytime. They're out when we don't see them. They're out when we're in bed, where we should be in the middle of the night. But anyway, so it's just amazing, and it makes me think of the creation story. And so, I think what we're going to do, we're going to look at the creation story. We're going to start with Genesis 1:1. If you have your Bibles, you can open that up to Genesis 1:1. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now think about this. The very first verse in the very first book of the Bible, and it's just this one simple thing that says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wow. What an opening, right? It's like we're stepping right into the middle of a whole bunch of action. Just like an action movie, how they always like throw you right in the middle of a battle or something. Like we're stepping right into, oh, and God created the heavens and the earth. Well, that's huge. I mean, that's a big deal. It's amazing. It's everything we know. But the first thing we see about God is that He's at work. I mean, God's working. God's doing what only God can do. He's taking nothing and He's creating something. So God's working. This is what He's doing. It's just pretty amazing. And then, I like Genesis 1:2. This is really cool because it says that He's hovering. It says the earth was without form and void. The darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Son of God, the Spirit of God, was hovering over the face of the waters. Now try to imagine that. It's not like we can actually really, truly imagine what that's going to look like. But here He is, He's God, and He's hovering. It's like He's thinking through it, and He's like, what am I going to do? Well, this is going to be good. You know, He's putting it all together, and He's planning it, and He's just kind of hanging out there thinking, okay. So what's the first thing He does? In Genesis 3, chapter 1, verses 3 and 4, He said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that it was good. So, first thing He starts with light. And then He steps back and He goes, that was good. That's a good one. I like that one. Okay. Then He moves on. And you got to see, in all of chapter 1 is like an overview of the creation story. Okay? It's like these big ideas that are just like one after another. These things that are being created. It's amazing. And then in verses 9 and 10, it says He separates the dry land from the waters. And again, He steps back and He says, that's good. And then, in verse 11 and 12, He says, He creates the plants and the trees. And what's He do after that? He steps back and He goes, oh, wow, that was good too. That was a good one. Plants and the trees. So you see what's happening here is He starts with one thing, and then He adds something else to it. And then He's adding something else to it. And He goes through the whole creation story where He's adding these different elements. But these aren't standalone elements. It's not like these are just the light, and it has nothing to do with anything else. They're all connected. They're all building on one another. They all have one thing to do with the other, and one helps the other, and one sustains the other. And it's like it's this big network that He's putting together. It's a fabric of creation that God is putting together. And it's amazing. It's just really amazing. In verses 20 through 22, He said, let there be living creatures in the waters and the birds in the air. And again, He steps back and He goes, oh yeah, that's good. That's good. And then He created in verses 24 and 25, he created the land animals. So this is a highlight. So we are going through this rather quick. So pretty much you have the 6 days of creation. Then he gets to verses 26 through 31. And then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on earth." So this is amazing, because so far he's made all these different elements, and he's putting them together, and now he's created man. But it's different when he creates man, because he actually gives man something to do. You know, he's communicating with man. He's not just, there's no other account of him talking to a tree or talking to the waters other than when he spoke them into existence. He is now communicating with man. So, I'm going to go, in verse 1 through 3, in the second chapter, we know that he rests. It's day 7, he's created everything, and he's created what he calls the host of the earth, mankind, and he's rested. And then, I really like where chapter 2 goes after that, because you start getting more details. Chapter 1 is kind of like this overview, you get the 6 days, you get into chapter 2, and then it goes back and revisits some of the little details that were in there. And I really like, wow, it's just so many good things. I like verse 5. You have chapter 2, verse 5. It says, "There were no bushes or small plants yet, because there was no rain." Can you imagine that? Did you know there was no rain? Verse 6 is a great visual. And it says, "The mist was going up from the land and was watering the whole face of the ground." So that's how the plants were being watered. God had made the system to where the mist was coming up from the ground and was watering all the plants. And then in verse 7, we get more detail on the creation of man. And I love this, because before you have God and he's speaking. He's like, okay, plants, light, But when he gets to man and he decides to create man, it's a whole different approach. It's a different relationship he has, because what he does, he gets his hands dirty. He comes down and he picks up the dirt that he just created, a few days ago, and he breathes into it. And this creates life. This creates an eternal life that's going to live forever. So you have earth, God's breath, and it's creating a living soul. And that's just, it's different. It's just different. It's amazing. And what he does in verse 8 is he then goes, it says God planted a garden. He planted Eden, and he took man, and he put man in the garden. So we see God working a lot here. I mean, at first we're coming to this story, and he's creating. He's creating everything. And then he's getting his hands dirty, creating man. And now he went and planted a garden to put the man in. So, I mean, he's very active. He's involved with his creation. And we all know the story of living in the Garden of Eden. We know Adam and Eve were tempted. We know the serpent convinced Eve to eat of the fruit. She did. She took it to Adam. He ate too. And as soon as they did it, they regretted it. We know that. We've all heard the story of the fall. So what you have here is you have this perfect imagery of what God created and how it all works together. And then you have the brokenness of a fallen world. And then now what we're seeing is Adam and Eve trying to figure out how to live. Like, all they've known is this, and now all of a sudden they have the broken world. They're separated from God. And they're ashamed. They're trying to hide from him. And he comes, he's like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" And they're like, "Well, we don't have any clothes on. We're naked." So, So what's God do? He makes them clothes. He does. He goes, again, with his hands. He makes them clothes and gives them something to cover themselves. So it's just this ongoing, God has this creation, and he's very involved with it. And he's very involved with who we are and what we're doing with his creation, because we're part of the process. I also find it interesting in, I'm going to go back to the first thing he gives man to do. What's the first thing he gives man to do? He gives him a job. He does. He says, okay, I need you to organize these animals. I need you to separate them into categories, and I need you to give them a name. So, before the fall, he gave Adam a job. Before Eve was created, he gave Adam a job. He says, this is your job. This is what I want you to do. So he gives him the ability to make these decisions. He has that creative side to him because he was made in the image of God, who is the ultimate creator. To be able to take what he has and create something. He created names. But that's what he could do on his level. Is he could take what God had made and make it better and do what God had given him to do. And so God gave him this ability, and he gave him the vision, and then guess what? God's involved in the process again. Adam's sitting there. God's bringing in the animals. Okay, name this one. Put him in a category. Name this one. Put it in a category. So we see this involvement from the very beginning of God as worker, and that we are made in his image, and we are meant to be his hands and feet, his agents, his people here on the earth. So, you know, we have God. He's made everything. He's the creator. We are the created, but it's very closely connected. It's the fabric where we all are a building part, a building piece in this. We're a piece of the fabric that fits together to continue God's work. And he's right there with us, giving us instruction, leading us, telling us. So we each have a very specific purpose. And work didn't stop when the fall happened. It didn't. It got harder. It did. All of a sudden, it says that there's thistles and thorns. All of a sudden, there's going to be sweat. All of a sudden, there's going to be pain in childbirth. All of a sudden, he cursed the serpent. He said, you're going to be the lowliest of animals. The woman's going to have a lot of pain in childbirth. The man's going to sweat. Well, as he fights the thorns and the thistles, breaking the hard ground so he can eat. So this is our first imagery of work and what work is. Now, I know, when you think of the word work, what do you think of? The traditional thinking is you get up, you get dressed, you go to work. Every couple of weeks or so, you get paid. That's what we think of when we think of work. And that's what most of us think. In my studies, I came across a definition by this guy named Lester DeCoster. And I'm gonna condense his definition because it's like way long. So basically what he's saying is his definition of work is what we do to serve others and what others do to serve us. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, you know, that kind of sounds like something a theologian would write. It's kind of idyllic, heady, you know. And I started thinking, is that realistic? I mean, is that really, can work be that? That it's all about service? It's all about serving one another and living in community and that type of thing? And then I started thinking, I don't know, man, I've had some bad jobs, you know? I mean, really, come on. We've all had them. But I remember one time, there was this part-time job. I was going to go out, I was going to get a part-time job. You know, who can't use the extra money from time to time? And I found a job. I did. It was good. I thought it was going to be good. It was close to the house. It was part-time. They were letting me work nights and weekends. And I thought, okay, this is good. I'll go do this job. So I took a job at a shoe store. Yeah, it's kind of dangerous to work at a shoe store. Especially with the big discount. But that job was not the best job. It really was. I was on my feet all the time. And if you've ever worked customer service, you know that it's almost like therapy for other people to get to yell at someone and talk to them like they're a complete idiot. That's pretty much the description of a customer service job, in my opinion. At least that was my experience at this particular job. It was pretty hard. I mean, on my feet, getting yelled at by people for ridiculous reasons, and people would come in and say, you know, I come in here every week and ask if you can have this shoe in brown. They would get angry over things like that. And I couldn't find enough ways to tell them, I can't help you. This is owned by the company. I have absolutely zero say in what shoes are in this store. There's not even a system in place for me to make a recommendation. That's it. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Call the company. You know. But I worked hard. I did. I worked really hard at that job. So you're running around, you're helping people, you're doing everything, and then at the end of the night you have to clean up. Oh my goodness. Put every shoe in the right box, just right, everything pretty, in the right spot. Then you vacuum, mop, clean the bathrooms. And then at the end of 2 weeks, I get a paycheck and I'd be like, really? You gotta be kidding me. And Mike would say that too. He'd say, really? You're working awfully hard for not that much money. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. So I'm thinking, in the middle of that job, while I'm working and just really feeling like it's not worth my while, and I'm not being utilized properly, and all this stuff. If I would have read DeCoster's definition at that time, that work, the definition of work is my service to others and other people serving me, I would have laughed. I would have gone, are you kidding me? I think I'm the one doing all the serving here, because I'm not seeing anybody serving me. I'm not really getting much out of this. So I think I would have thought that. But then I started thinking about it. After I started studying this more, and I started trying to see, how does God see our work? How does He see our jobs, our roles, and our use of our abilities? And then I started kind of putting it together a little bit. And I started thinking, well, on the big picture, okay, on the big picture. When I woke up in the morning to go to that job, I crawled out of a bed that I did not make, that somebody in some factory, in some mattress warehouse, is pushing a button all day to sew something together, and they're probably sitting there thinking, I'm of no use to anybody. Nobody recognizes me. I'm of no service to anyone. I'm not making much money. This is ridiculous. What good is my life? What am I doing? And then you flip on the light switch. Well, somebody somewhere down the line invented the wires that carry their electricity. They invented electricity. Somebody thought up a power grid. All I have to do is switch the light on. And then you start going through it. Your water that you drink, the cereal that you eat. I didn't grow those grains that made my cereal, and I sure enough didn't milk the cow that gave me that milk, you know? And then you start putting it, like the car you drive. You know, I didn't dig that oil. I didn't refine it. I didn't drive the truck. I didn't work at the gas station. You start putting it all together, and then you start realizing that we really are living in community, and we really are using whatever talents we have on any given day to serve one another. And then you start comparing that to the Scripture, and you start thinking, wow, that's kind of how God designed things. I mean, He designed the stars and the sun and the earth's rotation and every little small bit and big bit, and they all come together. And it's His creation, and He has a purpose, and He's at work in it. And we're part of it. We're part of the building blocks. We're part of that fabric where it comes together. So it doesn't matter what type of work you do, because maybe you're retired. Maybe you're a full-time mom, and well, that job never ends. Or maybe you own a business, and you just have to live at your job. Maybe other times you're an intern. You're just starting out. I mean, it really doesn't matter what your job description is. The fact is you have talents and abilities that God has given you, and you use them every day. So that's my definition of work. That's what we're working with this scriptural perspective of what it is that we're doing with our lives. Like, what's the significance? What are we working for? So, it's really good. Thing is, we live in the real world, and it's hard. It really is. And it doesn't matter if you have a job that you're passionate about, or if you have a job where you're in ministry and you get to do ministry every day. It doesn't matter if you have a job where you're not even allowed to talk about God. Okay? It doesn't matter what your job is. The fact is, whatever you're doing on any given day is your mission. It's your mission from God. It's your mission to live for Him in whatever circumstance you're in. And what's that mean? That means we got to do a good job. No matter who it is we work for, how nasty the customers are, or any of that. It's our responsibility to use our talents for God, to serve others, fight injustice, find a better way, stand up for people who don't have a voice, live a life of integrity, be creative, go for it, think outside the box, do a good job in your private moments when no one's looking, when you could easily just coast. Do a good job with your thoughts when you think no one else is seeing. He sees it. And you have to do your best with what you've been given. And that is our role. That is our part of God's mission. So if you're sitting here today and you're a Christian and you're thinking, really, what am I doing? What's God want me to do? What's His will for my life? His will for your life is to live your life for Him in your everyday. No matter where you go or what you're doing it for God. Because if you're chasing the American dream, you're kind of wasting your life. I mean, I know there's practical. We have to put food on the table. I know. But what you've been given is life. That's what God is bringing you. So He has this that He wants us to be. But we're living in a fallen, broken world. But the great thing is, the two meet. He meets us right here in the broken world, and we can live for Him in the middle of it. And every time we fall down, He's going to pick us right back up. And that's the point. So, He's inviting you every day to come alongside Him, to continue His work. It's His work that's going on. And we're His people. So we're an extension of Him. So, the word work, it requires you to be intricately involved in your world. Because we're created uniquely, but we are to live that out in community. So that's our mission, is to be involved in the middle of the world, because that's your mission field. Wherever you go every day, whatever you do, you're a missionary. Because I can't go to your job and do what you do. I don't have the relationships with your coworkers that you have. I'm not training your child. I mean, what you do every day, that's your mission field. And God will direct you. It's our job to work with Him. He's trying to pull this broken, hurting world back to Him. And He's constantly working. We see it all through Scripture. We see it today in our own lives, and we see in Scripture that at the end of times He's still working, and we're still a part of the process. And it's our job to help Him pull that world back to Him, because He's reaching out. He's trying. And we get to be part of it. So, that's just the best part. And so, I would like to just encourage you to maybe step back, get a little bit different perspective. Maybe take some of the things you're working for and trade them for what God's working for. So we can be in unison with what He's doing. We're going to watch a little video.
You and I might spend about 70 to 80 years on this earth.